Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video we're going to spoil rotten Godzilla King of the Monsters. Boy, there's a lot to discuss here, and I know my regular review is 18 minutes. This one, I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'll try and get through it a lot quicker. I'll just go straight to the spoilery stuff. In terms of the callbacks, well, first let's start with the monster roars, because this was a little bit of a disappointment for me. Mothra seemed to be the only monster that had her original roar, and they switched Godzilla's roar back to the original. He didn't have that deeper ending of his roar like he did in 2014. I think he might have used it once or twice, but every other time he roared, it was the original Godzilla roar from, I would say, the Showa era. It's kind of starting to figure out that Mike Doherty is a big Showa fan. And it didn't mean that I didn't like Rodan's roar or Ghidorah's roar, but they didn't have the Ghidorah roar I was hoping for, so that was a little bit disappointing, but not affecting the movie either way. Man, we get to these monsters pretty quick. I'd say within the first half hour, they're all there already. Rodan's the last one to burst out. Mothra's the first one to be seen. In terms of the callbacks, I don't want to go through the movie again because I kind of spoke about it in the non-spoiler review. But in terms of the callbacks, there was Destroy All Monster callback, and that was pretty obvious. But there was a couple of scenes that were very Destroy All Monster-esque. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 with Mothra basically sacrificing herself for... Mothra was very cool. Mothra had some pretty big moments, despite the fact that she wasn't on screen very long. When she was on screen, it was very impactful. There was this real dope scene, man, where Ghidorah is about to take it to Godzilla, and Mothra swoops in and pins his ass to a building with a web shot. I was like, what? She blasted a silk, and like two of the heads were stuck to the building, and you see like the other head trying to pick them out, and then the other head turns around and stares at the camera, and then you see Godzilla just bulldozer him right through the fucking building. Oh my god, it was so good. And man, it was so good. And Rodan and Mothra were duking it out, and Mothra was holding her own against Rodan. Yeah, so the other callback, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, when Mothra laid on Godzilla, and it was just like any Mothra movie you've seen where she dies and it goes into the air, her spirit or her mist, whatever you want to call it. And then as she's laying on Godzilla before that happens, like he starts turning red. So it's really a good callback to like when Rodan did that for Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. I would say pretty much every Mothra movie you've ever seen where when she dies, they pretty much simulated that in this movie, obviously with better effects. Man, yeah, it was a lot of callbacks. Godzilla taking off Ghidorah's head midway through the movie. But it wasn't like he did in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. It was, he just bit that shit right off. He was like, give me that. What else did they do a callback to? Pretty much a lot of the Showa movies with like the way they were fighting. Godzilla they were very fast. Godzilla was very fast in this movie, which is kind of what made it look weird at times. It was, when he was so slow in the other movies. There were other callbacks that weren't necessarily within the monster fights, but you got your Mothra twins. Yes, you did. It was very subtle, but this is what I'm talking about. These are callbacks that fans know about. Basically, Zhang Zi's character has a twin. Her twin is in the encampment with where Mothra is about to hatch, while the other twin is over at, where with the ship, with the Argo. And she talks about how she's a third generation Monarch member, and then they show pictures of how her family had very strong genes. Her mother and her grandmother, they were all twins. And then you see that there's a connection with her and Mothra. She can sense when Mothra's coming. I couldn't believe they did that. I was like, holy shit. It's so funny. This is why I get confused about why the critics are talking about, like some of the critics talk about how Millie Bobby Brown's character had a connection with Mothra when she had a connection with no monster. She really didn't. The only connection with the monsters seemed to be Zhang Zi's character, who had it was very subtle. This is what I mean when they said that they did stuff that was very classy and very tasteful. They didn't over encumber the whole twin thing. Like they were never even together in the same screen. They were in separate areas, but they made it very clear. And it was so awesome to see that. And when Mothra flew in towards the end of the movie to save Godzilla, like not when she sacrificed herself, pretty much when Ghidorah had Godzilla on the ropes, and this was right before Mothra pinned him to the building. You could see her, like she sensed it, like she closed her eyes, and the next thing you know, Mothra's flying out of nowhere. So man, that was so good. So you got your Mothra twins to a degree, which you like, and it was good enough. It's good enough. So I love that. Mothra, the larva form looks very different when you first see her, but when they scale back and they show her like full, like almost like her full body almost. This is when she goes to cocoon herself, when she comes into the waterfall. Looks very reminiscent of the Mothra from the Toho series. Only more threatening looking, if I was to say, for lack of a better term. What else did they... A lot of the references came at the end. Now, what you're going to see in these paper clippings, if you can catch it, there's a large monster apparently underneath Skull Island. I don't know if it's a skinwalker, if it's a skull crawler or whatever, but that got referenced several times toward on the end. Houston Brooks, the scientist from Skull Island, is in this movie. He's played by Joe Morton, and that is the returning Kong Skull Island character. Is Joe Morton plays Houston Brooks. He's only in the movie for a little while. He's in the encampment with the other twin when they're waiting for Mothra to hatch. So there's your Skull Island callback. They do bring up the Hollow Earth. They do mention Kong several times because they're talking about the Titans, and they mention Godzilla, Ghidorah, Kong, and all that. But those newspaper clippings, you got a lot of references to how the monsters affect the ecosystem. For example, in one of the magazine clips, it says how Godzilla being in the Pacific Ocean has essentially strengthened the ecosystem there because it flashes by so fast. But apparently the monsters in essence have an effect on the ecosystem in different parts of the region, and they're actually helping to improve the planet. They are freely roaming the planet at the end of this movie. This is the monsters and the humans are both on the same planet at the same time. So that's going to play a role. Also, a long time ago, I said there would be a possibility that Skull Island could become Monster Island. And what happens at the end of the movie? There's a newspaper clipping mentioning that all the monsters are beginning to gravitate towards Skull Island. So this could be that this is going to become their home. It could also be that there must be a huge threat underneath Skull Island that's bringing them all over there. And one way or another, the Titans are going to Skull Island. So we'll see what happens there. Another thing that I thought was rather interesting is at the end of the movie when Godzilla beats Ghidorah and he's standing. Now it's so dope because they pretty much use almost the exact same scene they used in Destroy All Monsters. After Godzilla has his meltdown and it kind of starts zooming in, and then you see Godzilla standing there by himself, or Godzilla Jr., whoever. The only difference is this time Godzilla was underneath the rubble and he pops out with Ghidorah's head in his mouth, and then he looks in the sky and he blasts atomic breath and blows up Ghidorah's head. So he doesn't need it. Anyway, when this happens, all the Titans come. Now again, you don't see all of them, but one of them is like this huge woolly mammoth. Another one is a giant spider. Another one is a Muto. Looks very reminiscent of the female Muto. And another one it's kind of hard to explain because I only remember seeing its face. But then it's got like this huge shield of a head. Like it's almost like a diamond shaped head, and it's huge. And then you see Rodan fly in and pay respect to Godzilla. And then the guy in the Argo says, "I'm glad he's on our side." And Zhang Zi looks and says, "For now." And right as she said that, you see Godzilla turn with this mean look on his face, and I think they're implying a heel turn. So it looks like Godzilla might be the heel in Godzilla vs. Kong. We'll have to see. But they threw that in there. I'm not saying they're gonna again, they're animals nonetheless, but it's pretty clear that they're leaving an Easter egg, or rather a seed, where Godzilla might be portrayed as the villain in this next movie. Okay, so Destroy All Monsters callback. How they did this. Now, remember one of my videos, I said, man, it would suck if he's burning Godzilla just because like he walks through fire or something. No. Basically, the way they explained it, and this was done rather cleverly, was that when Serizawa sacrificed himself to bring Godzilla back by setting off the nuclear bomb, since it was a direct shot and it was a much stronger bomb compared to what he was hit with back in the 50s, he got supercharged and he was on a countdown for 12 minutes where he was going to go to thermonuclear meltdown. The difference here is that when he gets supercharged, you're talking about like the Hulk. He gets so fucking big that he steps on Ghidorah and he is just enormous compared to Ghidorah. I'm like, that's ridiculous how big he is right now. I'm like his foot is like this and Ghidorah's chest is like that. And he doesn't blow the spiral breath. He doesn't blow any atomic breath at all. He does his nuclear pulse, and every time it pulses out, it's almost like he's on thermonuclear meltdown, but his body is almost extracting the power. And every time he extracts it, it's the nuclear pulse essentially. It melts a little bit of Ghidorah away. So like the first time he does it, you see a wing like burn off. The second time he does it, one head gets shredded away. He does it again, another head gets shredded away. And then the whole like Boston area just like you see like a little nuke bomb go off. And then that's when it pans in and you see that shot that's very similar to Destroy All Monsters. And then he comes out of the ground with Ghidorah's. It's just fucking incredible. The way he ends up almost dying is not that Ghidorah beats his ass to death. They use the Oxygen Destroyer. It was such a quick like throw in there. I didn't really like the way they did it, but essentially it only affected Godzilla because it affects monsters. Now all these monsters have some sort of reaction to radiation, but they're not as dependent on it as Godzilla is. So he's the one that took the shot. And basically he doesn't really die. Like initially they think he dies, but he doesn't die. He basically has to recharge. And when he goes back to his temple, and because the people that were in the Argo now in the submarine were so close to his temple, they got sucked into a vortex that took him to within his temple underwater. That's when they learned more about like the ancient civilizations were actually living with these monsters, like coexisting. And they explain in the movie how some of the monsters are very hostile, which are the monsters that are tagged as destroyers, like Rodan and Ghidorah. And a lot of them are basically monsters that bring balance. They don't necessarily protect humans. They're more protecting the earth because it's their home. They do confirm Ghidorah is an alien. They said it straight out. He's an alien. And so the reason these monsters are gravitating towards him is because he's kind of messing up the circle of life, so to speak. So he is an alien. He did come from outer space. They called him an alien and they said he's not of this earth. He came from out, so he is an alien in this movie, but it's very subtle. It was good enough so that they didn't overdo it. He was referred to as Monster Zero for much of the movie until Zhang Zi. Zhang Zi's character, or the twin, I call her the twin at this point, was the central character to give a little bit more of history behind the monsters, especially Ghidorah. So, and that is essentially her bloodline, her lifeline. So, and like I said, every woman family member in her gene pool, in her family tree line, are twins. So they are essentially the ones who are connected to Mothra. Whether or not they ever expand on that in the future, who knows? But it's there. So going back to the end, the ending, because I'm sure I'm missing some stuff here. I don't want to miss the clips I remember because I don't want to forget them. I do remember seeing a Manda reference. I can't remember exactly what it was said, but it was very brief. There was a monster they were talking about called Scalia. There's a monster named Behemoth. What else? And all these monsters are affecting the ecosystem. Like there was another clipping that said there was a monster in Antarctica that was stopping the melting of the iceberg. Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. I'm trying to remember everything I saw because that's where most of the Easter eggs were. Or at this point, I call them planting seeds. That's where all the seeds were planted. Was in the ending with the news paper clippings and the magazine clippings. And they talked, but the big ones were the ones on Skull Island. They reference Skull Island. There's a huge presence underneath. There's the hollow earth. Something is living under Skull Island. All the Titans are being gravitated towards Skull Island. They show another temple painting, this one of Kong and Godzilla facing off. So apparently there's some history there. And there's also that, like I said, there's that small tease of Godzilla turning heel. So, or I guess being less anti-hero and more villainous, this kind of looked like he was pissed at the humans at the end there. It was kind of fucked up. Mothra's hatching scene was a huge callback. They did the music. The lady twin was watching, and then all the stars kind of started moving, and then the stars dove onto Mothra and she hatched. And again, that's the kind of stuff that's a little bit cheesy, but it's a callback to Mothra hatching. I mean, not that we ever saw stars with her, but what I'm saying is the gracefulness, the whole deity thing was very obvious. It was very evident in that scene. So that was very cool. And her monster roar was on point. She then when she came out, she flew to where Godzilla was hurt, and she was basically calling Godzilla. And they kind of figured this out. They started changing the frequency on the Orca, or another device they had. It wasn't the Orca, but it was something similar they had on the Argo. And they figured out that's how they figured out he was still alive, because their equipment wasn't able to pick up his like vitals or his sensors. They thought he was dead. But then they figured out that Mothra was calling out to him, and then they realized, if we don't give him basically an injection of radiation, he could be sleeping for years to recharge. And essentially, his whole temple, that's where he was going all this time to recharge from the radiation. Other things I'm trying to think about, you guys might be curious about, because this one's already getting on 16 minutes. Basically, Godzilla wasn't seen again for the last 5 years, from the time they saw him in San Francisco to this point. And then they ran into him in the water. Apparently, Ghidorah waking up is what kind of triggered him. And that's when the whole thing started. They had a nice fight scene in Antarctica. And Sally Hawkins. Oh, my God. Poor doctor. Oh, my God. Yeah. So she died very unceremoniously. Basically, during that Antarctica scene where Godzilla and him were fighting, Ghidorah, obviously everybody's trying to run and get away and get to a plane. So Sally Hawkins' character is running across the snow to get to the plane where everybody else is going. And I think it was the left head was the one that was always hungry. So the left head was always trying to eat something, and the middle head would always smack it. You know what I mean? Like would hit it with its head. Anyway, the left head just dove down and snatched up Sally Hawkins' character, and goodbye, she was eaten. So she got eaten. But she was in the movie enough that she delivered her important. She played an important role. Excuse me, it's getting late. In the earlier part of the movie. I'm trying to think back to those newspaper clippings because there's so much more. They did tease a lot of other Toho monsters, but I remember the Mando one, because they had like this clipping they showed like a water dragon, and then they showed a clipping of these men holding this big like water dragon, not like a monster size, but to me it seemed like an obvious tease of Manda. But oh God, there was so much. I remember reading it, and it goes by so quick. That's the worst part. Like, I'm gonna go see the movie again, and I want to like clip those scenes on my phone so I can read them, because they really showed a lot. Like, they were really just dropping bombs at the end. And the most notable ones were the Skull Island ones. Like, that seems like it's gonna be Monster Island now. And they even said that Godzilla was heading there too. Like, Godzilla and all the Titans were gravitating towards Skull Island. The end credit scene was basically Charles Dance's character, who was pretty cool in this movie. He didn't get a whole lot to do, but he was there. He was fine. He goes back down to Mexico, Isla, where Rodan came out, where Rodan was staying, and basically some kind of like what they did in Pacific Rim, where they had that one character that was played by Jesus Christ, what's that guy? The guy who plays Hellboy, the original Hellboy. I forget his name at the moment, but you know how in Pacific Rim he was like farming and harvesting parts from the kaiju? So apparently there was a group of people that harvested one of Ghidorah's heads, because Ghidorah can regenerate. So that's why, like, even though Godzilla melted it away, he basically separated the heads from the body, but the heads can still regenerate. So anyway, they got one of Ghidorah's heads, and basically Charles Dance bought the head. And in the movie, they confirmed that Charles Dance's group of people, himself and his group, are basically collecting monster DNA. So my theory here is that he is making some sort of crazy big ass monster underneath Skull Island, and that's going to be a big baddie, maybe for Godzilla vs. Kong, or maybe for a future movie. I don't know, but man, did they drop bombs. But listen, guys, it's already 20 minutes in. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff, and I'll be reminded later. But we'll talk all about this stuff tomorrow on the live stream at 10 p.m. here on the channel. It's going to be a full spoiler discussion video, live stream. So definitely be here if you've seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, do not come. You don't, well, I guess if you're watching this, then you might as well, because you already spoiled it for yourself. But there's more missing. I know there is. It's just, it was so much to take in that you have to see it again. And next time, when that end credit rolls, I'm going to record it because I want to read all the stuff because it goes by quick. Like the minute I finish one sentence, it's already like I'm about to finish one sentence when I'm reading it, another one pops up. And then right as I go to read that one, it disappears and another one pops up and they're showing all these pictures and all these ancient tombs and all this other shit. And it's like information overload. You know what I mean? So, but I'll get to it and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. I'm sure some of you guys remember some more than others. And believe me, there's going to be a lot of Godzilla to discuss in the coming weeks. So anyway, guys, that's it for this spoiler review. Basically, it wasn't a review. It was just me talking all about the spoilers. But yeah, man, I'm sure I missed some stuff. There's so much to discuss. So come to the live stream and we'll do it there, all right? All right, guys, that's it for this video. This is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news. We just talk entertainment. Take it easy.
Thank you for watching E.T.N. Click here to watch more content. Don't forget to leave a comment. Also, make sure you like and share this video. If you want to know when the next video is up, click the notification bell next to the subscribe button. And most of all, make sure to click that subscribe button for regular content.